This conference will now be recorded.
It is very loud. Uh, Today we are here with Julia Condolora, local transgender activist who has been with the community for how many years now? Have you been
Mm,
active in our community?
Active probably 6 years, 5, 6 years,
Yeah.
something
And
like
you were
that.
on the board for the Gender Identity Center, correct?
Correct.
And what position were you on in the board there?
Um, I was a member at large at first, and then I became the vice president of the board.
Right. And so tell us a little bit about your experiences with with the Denver transgender scene and the Gender Identity Center, and like also your experiences with whatever you want to share about coming out or being a part of our community.
Okay, well, I took a very slow path to coming out and becoming part of the community. I really started to transition pretty much on my own. I didn't initially seek any support outside of myself, and I didn't really become part of the community mostly because I was really worried about work in my
Mm,
business, and I was afraid that it would be the end of my business. And so, even after I did come out and transition was kind of going full force, I still kind of kept my male persona at work. Again, just because I was afraid it would ruin my business. Turned out that that really wasn't the case when I finally did come out. Nobody really cared. I'm sure there's a million stories like that amongst trans people that,
mhm.
we worry more about what's going to happen than what actually happens sometimes.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you start visiting the Gender Identity Center? About how long ago was that?
Oh, God, I'm not really very good at remembering dates and things like that, but it would have had to been 5 years ago at least or
Hmm.
more. Yeah.
Hmm.
So maybe I should be adding a couple of years onto everything when you ask me because time just goes by really fast, and all of a sudden you say, "Oh yeah, it could have been longer ago than that."
Right.
Yeah,
And time
I
right now especially is weird, it feels like. So,
yeah. And come to think of it, I changed my name just about 5 years ago. So
hmm.
let's say I started going to the Gender Identity Center maybe 7 years ago.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
And what inspired you to become part of the board there and continue on doing volunteer work for the transgender community in the Denver area?
Well, they just were calling for board members at one point, and so for people to apply, and I thought, this place has given me so much support and help um, that I just really wanted to give back. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that's a really important thing for
Nice.
me.
Yeah. And how would you say that like some of the support services that have been offered through a lot of organizations, the Center, the Gender Identity Center, the Transgender Center of the Rockies, how how would you say those may that you've seen them impact your own experience and other the experiences of other transgender people?
Oh, it's major. These organizations save people's lives. You
Hmm.
know, I feel like trans people more than anybody else, especially young trans people, really need support. They need answers to their questions.
Hmm.
And sure, you can get all that stuff on the internet. You can find answers to everything on the internet, but do you really trust it? You know, Getting information from a person face to face, somebody that you know, somebody that you've learned to like and trust, is way more impactful than just something that you read on some article that may be different on the next article you read.
Hmm.
Um, and all these organizations are so important.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. And what's something that you would tell transgender folks who are coming out right now? What's a piece of advice? If you could give yourself advice from before your journey, what would some of that advice be like? What would that be?
The world's not going to end.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be okay. That this is going to work out well for you. I don't know if you could say that to everybody and expect that to be true, but
Mm-hmm.
um, just that there's so much fear in coming out, so much
Mm-hmm.
fear in what's going to happen to you and your life and your friends and all that, your family, that it's kind of overwhelming. It really is. It's easily the hardest thing any of us have ever done, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be my advice, is that it's going to be okay, even though some people probably might not be supportive,
Mm-hmm.
especially family members, but it's going to be okay. And over time, things will all probably work out.
Mm-hmm. And what's been the community been like for you? What sort of resources and support have you been able to get from other transgender and gender diverse community members?
Oh, it's well, I've just so many friends and people that, for one thing, there's nothing like the experience that you can get when you're talking to another trans person, the
Mm-hmm.
experiences that you both share, even if you're totally different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm older and I transitioned later in life, but I can still relate to somebody that's like 18 years old. They're some of the things they're going through are exactly the same as mine. And some of the fears. I mean, at support groups, I hear it all the time. Some of the things that they say is like, "Oh yeah, I that was me."
Mm-hmm.
So just all the friends and the people I've met, it's really been a wonderful thing to have this community around us.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And what is something that you would say to viewers who are friends and families of transgender folks coming out and who want to support them?
Um, I'll tell you, the very first time when I was working the booth at Pride, and um, a couple of parents came up to me and they said they had like a 10, it's going to make me cry even right now. They had like a 10-year-old kid that was trans and had just come out to them, and they wanted to know how they could find support for that person and that they wanted to support him fully. It was just, it brought tears to my eyes because it's, you know, so many of us don't get to experience that. We don't get that support from our families. And I've been lucky, really. My family's been very supportive, but I know so many people that,
Mm-hmm.
divorces and parents that won't talk to their own children.
Yeah.
It's an awful thing when parents aren't supportive.
Yeah.
But, you know, um, when they are, it's wonderful. And for us, I think for us, what we need to do is educate parents so they understand. Because
Definitely.
sometimes it's hard to get the information from their own child or their own sibling or
Mm-hmm.
wife or husband. Um, Hearing it from a third party that is kind of distant and doesn't really have a stake in it, they maybe
Mm-hmm.
can understand it better and get a better outcome.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Thank you for everything, Julia, and thank you for all the work you've done in our community. You've been a leader on so many levels, leadership for the Transgender Day of Remembrance and leadership for the Transgender and Gender Diverse Thanksgiving. We really appreciate all the work that you've done for us and hope that you have a wonderful day. And thanks to the viewers for being a part of this.
You're welcome. And it's my pleasure, honestly. It really is.
Definitely. Thank you.